everyone. I'm your host, Hunter Begun. Welcome back to the Moss House podcast. I'm here with our current artist in residence, Ayasha Guerin. Okay, it only took me 3 times this time. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling good. I just finished editing the films I'm going to show tomorrow.
You finished the whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's not in a final form, but it's in a form that I'm proud to show.
Jeez, nice. How many hours of editing do you think you had to put into that?
I don't even know.
You lost track?
Like 30, maybe. 30?
You're only here for that's like a full-time job spent just in the editing room.
Yes, it was a lot of editing, but it was really nice to be able to just open the front door and sit on the stoop and listen to animals to get re-inspired.
Really? That's the best way to get re-inspired for you?
Honestly, I didn't really leave. Like, I stayed really local, like really rooted to this house and this yard the whole time.
It's so interesting. I would think that since we work with so much technology that you would explore.
I mean, I explored to the edge of the property, and I've been in the bay with the oysters. And
You went in there?
Yeah.
Like in the water?
Oh, yeah. What? I was moving some oysters around, putting them on a new line. You'll have to come see the film, too.
Yeah.
To get the full picture.
Yeah, let's see. That's coming out May 14th at 6 o'clock. I don't think anyone's going to hear this before that. There's no way I can edit this down in time. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your art? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I feel like I'm in a really interesting place with my practice right now because I'm an interdisciplinary artist and I've always worked across a lot of different mediums. But right now I'm just coming out of a 4-month period of starting a dance studio in Vancouver where I've been living. And in that dance studio, it hasn't been like traditional choreographies. It's been people coming together and kind of just experimenting with sounding and moving and intuitive breath work and things like that. And it's been really healing. And it's also been really inspiring just to come and gather with like the same people for 4 months. Some of those people are artists, like visual artists. Some of them are performers. Some of them have never set foot in a dance studio before. But I am somebody who danced a lot as a child and then didn't dance from like the age of 20 till this year. And so I'm really feeling back into that dance practice and that intuitive, movement that is like such a different kind of expression than working with photography or film. And so as you'll see tomorrow, I hope you're coming.
Yeah. It'd be a shame if I didn't.
The film I'm showing has a bit of dance, has a bit of poetry, and then it's basically a kind of mashup of moving images that I've captured while here talking to people about their relationship with animals and nurturing life that is non-human. That's kind of the theme across all of my work, my research, and my art practice. And I would say that my art practice is very much driven by research questions. The most fundamental one being like, how do we live together? Not just as people who exist in societies in mostly urban places where I'm living, but also with all the other forms of life and all the changes that are happening at this moment because of things like climate change and because of widening disparities and so on and so forth.
Very interesting. So a few things I want to talk about that you mentioned. So I saw that the dance studio stuff, but I did not realize that was like something that you like started yourself. That's pretty cool. I am a very bad dancer. I've tried it many times. Never had anyone try to teach me though, like in a studio. So, but maybe one day I'll learn to dance. One of my goals is to be able to dance well. And then so with your work or past like this film, so I recently just saw a film that was basically all about the mistreatment of animals, and then one of them got too smart because they were like experimenting on them. Guardians of the Galaxy 3. I was very surprised. I mean, I don't want to make it about that movie, but it's just very interesting that because I've been thinking about that a lot, and then now I'm going to see another film about it tomorrow. I've been like every day. I got a lot of things out of that movie. And one thing I actually was thinking about that. I guess I'll just ask you now. It's going to be later on in the questions, but so that movie is a lot about that. What makes like person human is humans have the ability to make something and think things that haven't been thought of before. And in our work, storytelling, every single story has been told. I feel like the narrative way you can like tell it, in terms of like if you're making a story about a hero, there's the hero story or whatever, and there's like a book with like there's only like 10 stories that you can tell, I think. And recently I've been feeling, how am I supposed to tell something new? Just thinking of new stories, but every time I think of a new story, I feel like it's almost already been told, but just it'd be different, my own characters. Have you ever felt like that you can come up with something original, but it's nothing brand new in the film medium?
I think that's why I turn to the personal and really approach my like film making and narratives and storytelling from my perspective, right? To be like, okay, this is my positionality. This is how I'm arriving. These are the connections I'm making from these other relations in my life. Because yes, maybe there are like common stories, common themes, but I do think that because everyone has such a different personal life experience, there's like infinite stories. Mm-hmm. You know, like sometimes that happens in academia where people get nervous because they have like the same research topic or they have the same project, but no two projects will ever produce the same result, because we're bringing so much of our own stuff to that work. I mean, I guess some research is it's like intentionally not supposed to be partial to your own stuff coming in, but I'm working in a kind of part of the university where it allows for that. I'm not like a scientist. I'm like a writer and an artist. So it's welcome. But that's what I tell my students when they feel stuck, because yeah, everybody's story is worth telling, and every story is inherently interesting, I think.
That's a good way to make me feel better about it. We haven't mentioned it yet, but there is a Ph.D. on the podcast. I think you're the first Ph.D. we've had, which is very cool. The highest educated person. And that's very, because I didn't even, I got like 2 years into college, and then I ended up leaving. So we have both ends of the spectrum, going as far as you can go, and then only making it 2 years, which is interesting.
I mean, college is not like the most comfortable place for a lot of people, and I think that those systems, university systems, are inherently colonial systems. They're inherently judgmental systems, and I think that for artists especially, it's pretty hard to exist within them and be able to explore from center because you're held to all these other standards and expectations that are not necessarily matching your value system. So I totally understand that university is not for everyone. For me, it was like a way that I could fund my art practice. Oh. I'm somebody who, from a very young age, was told by my mother, who raised me, that there wasn't money for college, so I would have to do really well and get a scholarship to go to college. And so that was like in my head from a very young age. So I think I approached education like my way out and my way into having the kind of life that I would have control over. And so, I mean, also I'm just a kind of inherently curious person, so I like research. And I didn't expect to go and do a PhD, actually. I was, when I was like 19 or 20, I was looking towards the end of my undergraduate degree, and I had just taken off and done a whole year abroad in Berlin.
Oh, wow.
I went to Berlin because I heard it was the cheapest city in Europe. And
Really?
at that time it was. And I worked at the study abroad office at school. And so I learned that I could actually, my scholarship would transfer to my bank account if I went abroad.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So that was like the first time that I was living alone in a foreign country with like a lot of autonomy, my own finances that were comfortable. And I thought I was going to be an artist. I thought I was going to be like a photographer. I thought I was going to, if I was lucky, move to New York and work in fashion or something. I didn't really know. I just knew I wanted to be creative. And then I think it was a professor of mine told me, hey, you should consider grad school. If you get in, they pay you, which I didn't know.
I didn't know that either.
No. I mean, if you do a master's degree, you have to pay, but if you do a Ph.D., they pay you. And so I looked for programs that would allow me to do a Ph.D. without doing the master's. And then I found one in New York City, of all places,
Wow.
at NYU American Studies. So that was a means to an end to have a creative life in New York. And it was also a huge blessing because it led me here, really.
I did not know that NYU has a PhD program that they pay you.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting because my sister goes there, and that school is so expensive for undergrad.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe she can come back and steal some money back from them if she gets a PhD.
Yes.
I don't think she's gonna. I don't think she's doing like media and communications. I don't think there's a. Maybe there's a PhD in that, but
There is, yeah.
yeah.
I have a friend who did it.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I wonder what that's like the classes. When I went to school, I didn't know I was gonna be an artist, or I even wanted to be an artist. I just knew I liked doing some creative stuff, and like like talking to people or making connections, I guess, more. So I was like, oh, I'll do marketing, and then I was like, this sucks. So, and now I make videos for Mom's House. A couple years later, how old was I? Oh wow, that was like 5 years ago when I left college. It's catching up. It's weird. Okay, so as a multidisciplinary artist, what are some of the other forms of art that you've done in your life?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I really started with photography. That was in film photography, darkroom photography. I actually use still the same camera that was my grandfather's, and then my mother's, and then all my baby photos were taken on this camera.
Wow. Is that the one you were recording with outside?
No, I didn't bring it with me now because I knew I was going to shoot digitally. But I have brought that camera here before, and I do have some beautiful shots of Shinnecock on film. But the film camera industry situation right now is really bad. Like film, since the pandemic, really has like tripled in price. Oh. So it feels unaffordable to really do that. Also, all the dark rooms, like I had a color darkroom that I would print in undergrad, and they closed it my last year there, and I think it was one of the last color darkrooms in the country. So it does feel like I had to make a switch from film photography to a different medium. I resisted digital photography for a long time, and I still kind of do, but film is different for me because like the moving image, it just makes so much more sense to have that digitally. Though I do have friends who shoot films on Super 8, and they're gorgeous, and now I'm curious about that too. But beyond that, I mean, I think I've been kind of invited into the practices of some of my friends who are performance artists, so I do a bit of performance. I'm really interested in the workshop as a mode of art, like as a form of entering an institution and engaging people with art. So I've explored that a little bit. That's also what the dance studio is all about, is having a series of workshops. Actually, Brianna did the first one.
Really?
Yeah, Brianna opened the studio. It was via Zoom, but it was really beautiful. We opened with the question of grief and how do we live in the midst of dying. And, Brianna is also a death doula as well as a talented artist and curator. So yeah, she helped us open the space.
That's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea. Okay, so that kind of leads into my next question. Is there I guess you kind of mentioned it with the shooting movies on film, but are there any other art disciplines that you haven't tried but want to?
Well, one thing that I'm also just beginning to get into is really paying attention to sound, and making field recordings, and I think that's the next step in my art career, is to really hone my sound skills and make some audio pieces. It's been so beautiful to go out and listen to the chorus of the birds here every day, and I have so many recordings of the birds. And to this morning I was busy on the stoop trying to capture the sound of a buzzing bee, and there's always the sound of planes overhead that I'm capturing as well. And so I'm trying to do more with sound, but also words, and poetry and writing, and trying to combine those two. And you'll see that a little bit in the film tomorrow as well. It's kind of a mashup of all of these intentions.
That's exciting. Sound is very, very difficult for anyone who has never done anything with sound. As someone who makes films, when I first started, I was not really paying attention to sound at all. And then I was like, I just got to focus on making the video look nice. And then I was like, wait a second, this feels just looked strange. It looked fine, but it just like didn't feel complete. And then one of my friends who actually went to like film school was like, yeah, it's because you suck at doing sound. So I was like, oh, that seems to be a problem. So I went and bought a bunch of like microphones and stuff, and he told me that sound is more important than whatever video you're capturing. It has no one's gonna notice if your video is a little shaky, but everyone's gonna notice if you have bad sound design, because it's just so jarring to have bad quality audio.
Yeah. I can't promise perfect quality audio tomorrow.
No, that's for sure.
It's been a very windy experience.
Yes, that's one that can't film at the beach. So like, I'm still learning as well. I've had artists want to film at the beach. You can't talk at the beach. I'm sorry. There's just too much wind. And you're going to listen back to it, and it's just going to sound so bad. And I don't have the skills in the editing room for sound. Because my ears I'm supposed to wear hearing aids also. So I'm listening to stuff. I'm like, oh God, I hope this sounds good. I just have to hope that things sound like what I hear to other people. And usually they do not. But working on that.
I think I'm trying to approach it in a way that's a little bit different than the film industry would, where the sound is super clean and in a way kind of artificial, right? I think I'm trying to actually, like, I'm interested in the sound of the wind, as well as the sound of somebody shouting over the wind to let me know how to grow an oyster, right? Like, I think I'm not striving for perfection, but with the sound, but I do want things to be audible. So it's I'm listening to more than human, right? I'm listening to all the different elements that are making sound in that moment, and that's part of the like holistic meditation that is this practice at the moment.
I completely agree with that. That's an artistic choice, honestly.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. And
that's a convenient way to not have to be perfect with sound.
Yeah. But like using the wind, because then that's kind of one of the players in the short film now. It's like the wind is a character that your other character has to overcome in that moment, which makes sense, rather than like I start crumbling a piece of paper in the microphone and then it just sounds really bad. That's what I meant, just like making it sound as like what you want, what it's supposed to sound like, what you want it to sound like. And I also just hate filming at the beach. Filming sound at the beach sucks.
It's hard.
Yeah, in my opinion. And as brown people, I'm always recording too much sun. Like, it's hard to even get the good like lighting. For people, recording the beach is just the bane of my existence. It frustrates me. Unless it's like a nice cloudy day, then I'm like, let's go film at the beach. Because then it's like my... but then the wind is even stronger because of the weather. Yeah, that's my anti-filming at the beach tangent.
Well, I film a lot at the beach. A lot of my work is about shorelines. It's about the relationship that we as humans have with other life at that shoreline. So I'm filming at the beach all the time, but sometimes I just use it for the imagery and take the sound off and put the voiceover of what it is I'm thinking about on top. So that helps a little bit with that problem.
That's what I had to start doing. And I love the beach. But when someone starts asking me to take pictures, then I start getting upset. Not at them, just in my own mind, because I know they're not going to be good what people want. Yeah, I'm surprised you're able to do it so well. I thought it was universally hated if I film people, but
it's just the beach is what calls me.
I see. I did a. You ever done a polar plunge before? Well, this is random. Just thought of it now.
Man, that's so funny you say that because I have been since I made all these new friends in the studio, they all have been living in Vancouver a lot longer than I have, and it's a very common thing for people who live there to do polar plunges. They don't call it that, they just call it cold plunges, but they do it in the waterfalls with the glacier water.
That sounds nice.
I mean, it's beautiful, but it's freezing. Yeah. They do it in the ocean before it's even like 60 degrees. They do it in the rain. I went to the beach with my friends the other day and they went in the rain. And no, I have never done that because I like a Caribbean beach. That's like my ideal beach. My father's Jamaican, and so growing up, going to Jamaica and being on those beaches was like probably the reason why I became so obsessed with shorelines in the first place.
I just want to say I do love Jamaica. It's awesome there. I have lots of good travel stories of my parents freshly divorced and my dad taking us on trips and like us all getting hurt in a way, like me getting sun poisoning.
Oh no.
My dad like breaking his leg or his ankle.
No.
It was like looking back, it was bad at the time, but it's so funny now because just the ways everything kept happening. Like the way he broke his ankle was for some reason he was walking to the basketball court and I guess he saw me, so he ran over, hit the ball from the side. I was holding it like this. On my side, and he started dribbling backwards, and then there's like a little divot in the sidewalk. He just stepped on it, cracked his ankle.
No.
It was hilarious afterwards because I just couldn't believe that that's how he did it. And then this random guy told him, he like ran over and was like, "I break my ankle every day." And I was like, "What are you talking?" He's like, "I break my ankle every day. This is nothing." And then his ankle like swelled up to like 2 baseball sizes. He's like, "Oh, you're fine, you're fine." It was just fine. And then they gave him crutches, and they were so lopsided, so it was just hilarious. And then I was like so sunburned, and my sister's hair, she had never gotten a haircut at that point, and so my dad didn't know what to do with her hair, so it started like getting crazier and crazier every day, like more and more higher up. Yeah.
With the humidity.
Yeah, those are good times.
Well, that last one doesn't sound like too much of a problem.
No, it's not. But unless it's all happening at the same time, and then you go to the airport, and the kids you go to school with, like, and their moms or friends, so they're like family friends, kind of. They saw us and like, what the heck happened to you guys? They saw us before, and then they saw us afterwards. We're all disheveled a little bit. It's one of my favorite travel stories. At the time, not really, but now, definitely. I also want to talk about there's polar plunges here. Actually, it gets very cold in the winter, and the beaches are great at during the summertime, like a month away. They're perfect. But last time I did it, there was seals like in the water.
Wow.
And they kept popping their heads up. They looked like they had pumpkin heads. They were very cute. And then jumped in the water. I was a little scared. It's like, well, one of us might get attacked by the seal or just taken away by the seal. But luckily no one did.
No.
And I did it for some reason. I was like, oh, it was like to raise money. So I was like, I'll go dressed in full business attire and then jump in the water. Yeah, that was my, and I was like, anyone who donates will get a Google Drive folder of all the photos of me as a businessman jumping in the ocean.
That sounds really uncomfortable.
Once you got out of the water, it was horrible because you're like very weighed down, and then it was really cold outside the water, but it was still kind of fun. It raised like $200.
Okay, well, thank you for your service.
No problem. But yeah, definitely.
I mean, the visitation by the seals, though, that's special.
Mm-hmm.
That's
nice.
really beautiful. I don't think I've ever been swimming with seals. I've seen a couple pop their heads out at the ocean in Vancouver, but I have a great desire to swim with seals, actually.
Really? Wow. Huh. So how did you end up in Vancouver?
Oh man, that is a story. So when I moved to Berlin to finish up my writing for my Ph.D., it had gotten a little bit more expensive 10 years later, but it was still much more affordable than staying in New York City, where I spent like basically all of my 20s. So I was finishing my dissertation, and then the pandemic happened, and I guess right before the pandemic started, my advisor had convinced me to apply to some jobs. I told him I don't want to go into academia. I want to be an artist. I moved to Berlin. I'm just gonna be an artist, be a curator, do some projects over here. And he said, well, just do one round, like just apply 1 year. If you don't get anything, fine. It's notoriously hard to get a job in academia. So just give it a shot and then go do your thing. And so I said, okay, fine. and I applied to some jobs, and I ended up getting this one in Canada, at the University of British Columbia. And I'm not even like, it's random that I applied because I had never been to Canada and I didn't know anything about Vancouver. I didn't know anyone there. I just thought that I had a sense that it was a place where I might be able to see a different kind of nature and spend a lot of time in the rainforest. And so, yeah, I got this job like the week that all the borders shut down. And I had to decide if I was going to move with my partner from Berlin to Vancouver and start this whole career, which I never planned on doing, in an English department, which I had never ever imagined to be in. I've never even taken an English class. I mean, beyond like grade school. So it was a total blessing, and it was also extremely foreign to me. And then arriving, I found myself in a department with like 70 people, 70 professors, many of them specializing in things like Shakespeare. Don't tell anyone, I don't read that. But it's been interesting. I've been able to think a lot about language. The first class I taught, they told me to teach a course on world literature in English. And that broke my brain because I thought, this is not a container for a class. Like, world literature in English, like there's so much world literature in English, like, can we narrow it down, And so they said, teach it however you want. So I ended up teaching it as a course where we read the writing of people from countries that had been colonized by the English, who were writing back against colonization and against the sort of colonization of their culture and language with new ways of changing the English language. So like in Jamaican patois, for example. And so we moved all around the world. We studied the history of British colonialism, and we read and listened to the songs and poetry and like resistance literature, basically. And I was really grateful for the opportunity to do that reading, to sit with students and think about the importance of language and the importance of, preserving the ideas that are lost when you lose a language, right? Ideas about how to relate to things like other animals, other life, rivers, oceans. So that's how I got to Vancouver. And that's what I ended up doing there. And that's where I'm at. That's my day job.
Wow. Oh, yeah. And you're talking, are you allowed to talk about your new
Yes,
situation?
yes, I can talk about the new situation. So I guess it hasn't been announced yet, but maybe by the time that this podcast comes out, it will be. I've just taken a new position at UCLA in the Department of World Arts and Cultures / Dance. So it's really a beautiful opportunity to continue to explore the movement aspect of my practice, the curatorial and the artistic. One thing I really appreciate about this job is that because most of the people in the department are artists, and it's within the art school, the School of Art and Architecture at UCLA, there's a block scheduling system, or there's a quarter system where you can teach your classes in half the year and take half of the year to work on your art. So it's a real new way of being in academia, being half in and half out, which I've been straddling my whole life. But now it feels like I'm entering a space and a system that's already set up to support the kind of work that I do.
That's so cool. Congratulations. I
Thank
wanted
you.
to go to UCLA for school. I ended up going to University of Buffalo, which is completely opposite. One of them is basically Canada, like 40 minutes away from the border. And then, which I used to go to Canada all the time, but then the other one's in a nice warm area with fun times. Huh. I'm like, okay, let's just do a time check. What's wrong with something's wrong with my eye. I don't know what. But, I know what happened. I got shampoo in my eye this morning. Okay, well, that's besides the point. Whatever. So we have about 15 minutes left to this podcast, and I'd like to get the game as well.
The game.
The game's important. Let's see. Just steer us towards the end. Well, we did kind of talk about it a little bit, and like the outside world and animals are some of your inspirations to make art. But do you have any other inspirations to make art?
I think I'm really inspired by resistance to oppression. I'm inspired by activists. I'm inspired by people who are trying to enact new systems of justice or something like that. I think like the world is a very, very, very overwhelmingly violent place, brutal place, and there's so much what Fred Moten calls individuation, or the kind of forcing people to see themselves as individuals rather than part as communities, and there's so much that we can't do without considering the other in our everyday actions that we just do inherently, but we're not really tuned into. And so I think I'm inspired by that like connection and accountability and the power that I do believe we have if we all tune into that and resist these structures of domination that are not only hurting us as people and people of color, but also, animals and all sorts of other non-human life forms and nature. So obviously I've been very inspired by Indigenous literatures, and I've learned so much in Vancouver from the local peoples. The Stolo artist and writer Lee Maracle was the first person that I read before I arrived. She wrote a book called My Conversations with Canadians, very humorous, but also, also just like really getting to the point of like, belief systems and the violence of colonial belief systems and the Indigenous resistances to them. And since being there, I've learned a lot from the activists of the many different Indigenous communities who are living there, the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh peoples. I think it's been very, very important that I've been there for my own growth and my own sense of being able to connect these struggles across these arbitrary borders.
Very interesting. Very interesting. This is kind of a stupid question, but what is your favorite non-human life form?
Probably water.
Water? Oh, yeah. Consider it. Yeah.
Yeah, water is life, right?
It is. Yeah. Is that kind of like saying like air?
Air
for fish.
Air, yeah. Air is also important, but I'm definitely more. I'm a double Pisces, so.
Oh, okay. That's the water, double super water sign.
Yeah, I'm very much comfortable and inspired and feeling at home when I'm by water. Berlin is the only place I've ever lived that's not on the ocean.
Really? Huh. Mm-hmm. A question for you, since you say you're Pisces, is green one of your favorite colors?
Green is one of my favorite colors.
Yeah. Every Pisces I know loves green. I used to live with one, and he was like into Celtics basketball, wore green everything. His favorite the school I went to is called Hendrick Hudson. It was blue. All the things are blue. He went for like 6 months to this other school everything was green, and he just loved that school so much, and so just would wear the merch to school, to the other school, because it was all green. I think that's interesting. I'm not sure what that is. What kind of connection that is.
Maybe it's like a connection to nature. I don't know.
Yeah, the outdoors.
Yeah.
I don't know. It probably means absolutely nothing, but I just wanted to point it out for some reason. Okay. We might have to scrap the game or do a rapid fire mode, but I have like 2 or 3 more questions I would definitely want to ask you. This one we'll start with how does your way of making art change when you're on a residency rather than when you're in your own, like at home in your studio or whatever?
Mm-hmm. This has been such an exciting period of growth and change for my practice generally, like this spring, but being here and being kind of grounded to this house, this amazing intergenerational house with a great story, and the generosity of being welcomed here, and the generosity of all of the animals around who visited me while I was here, just like being on the hammock and having a little bird fly down to look at me. And I find it to be like the perfect residency for me because I'm simultaneously able to focus on creating work, but also inspired when I just walk out of the door. So I find that the process of editing here has been really interesting because I'm editing and then I go outside and I'm like, oh, I gotta film that and bring it back into the editing room. So it's felt a little bit less like a normal process of okay, I have this footage and now I have to edit it and then I have to show it. It feels more cyclical or circular.
Oh, that's so interesting. I've never had worked on anything like that before. You're editing now I got to go outside real quick, film something else.
Yeah. I mean, I think I haven't been here for that long, and I took a big job for myself to try to show a film that I shoot and make in less than 2 weeks. But I think that it's kind of changed the way that I'm working, where I had to start editing from the first day, and I had to start shooting from the first day, and recording all the time, and so it's just a much more of a soupy process.
I was wondering how it's even possible.
Yeah.
that is the perfect solution to do it like that. I was going to ask you how that process was like, but you already answered it. That's pretty amazing. Okay. Well, you already took one of my questions away.
What was the question?
It was just going to be like, what is your editing process? Because that for me, that's exactly when I'm actually making art. My art is once I sit down and do stuff on the computer. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about that? I guess that would be my question. Do you think the recording, or what do you see, is that the start of it, or where does the true art making take place?
Yeah, I mean, for me, this project has already been started before I arrived. it's been started for many years. All of my art feels like it bleeds into one another. And I think that I knew that I needed to come here now because of the oysters, because I had met Mila, who was running the oyster hatchery last year, and he told me that in May would be when the oysters are ready to come out. So I knew that I needed to come now at this time, even though it's kind of a funny time for me to be at a residency because I'm moving internationally in 10 days. Yeah. But I knew I needed to come. Days? Yeah, well, at the end of the month. I knew I needed to come back because the oysters were calling, and I think that was always the only thing I knew I was going to do here. I thought I might find other people and other life forms to think with, and I have, especially the chickens that I hear all the time here. But I think that the process changed a lot for me, even in the 10 days that I've been working on it, because I didn't know what I was going to say. Like, I knew what I wanted to show, but I didn't know exactly what I wanted to say, and I'm still working it out, because the questions that I'm asking are about, like, what is it to nurture? What is that act? And how do we do it in a way that feels true and right, and is not an act of smothering, right? Because that's the thing that can happen with care, is that somebody can think that they're caring, but in fact they're actually constricting growth in a certain way. And so I'm trying to think, like, what does it mean to nurture that allows space for growth, and what does that look like when you're thinking about that relationship beyond the human, that kind of humility that I see in the ways that people are engaging with animals and sea life here at Shinnecock. So one day I just woke up and I had a poem in my head. And I started writing this poem on my phone in the bed for like 3 hours. And the poem is a lot about, just thinking with these questions of like growth cycles. It's springtime, right? So the seeds are waking. New life is breaking open, and also thinking about, all of the processes of care and attention that allows for that new life to flourish. What are the conditions for mutual flourishing? This is a question that has been in my head for the past couple of months, and that I've been talking with my peers at the studio a lot about. So now there's a poem, there's some footage, and there's some sound, and putting it all together, let's see. And there's a dance, and we'll see how it all lands tomorrow.
I am excited to see the film. You're making me think a lot about how I approach my work now. I feel like you're very good at questioning, figuring out the right questions to ask. It seems to be one of your strengths, and a lot of the time, other people are also asking questions. Hello, Jeremy.
Hello. Got 2 minutes?
2 minutes? Okay. Oh, you guys are carpooling. No wonder. Oh, God. All right, well, lead artist Jeremy Dennis has told us that we have to stop the podcast. But before we go, I want to give you a chance to plug in all your social media and stuff. And my last question to you before that is, what is one movie you think everyone should see?
Born in Flames.
Born in Flames, yes. And what's the name of your movie tomorrow?
It's untitled. It's an untitled film because it's not finished. It's not in a final form, but the theme is nurture.
Nurture? Okay. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Okay, well, now's your opportunity to plug in all your social media, tell people to go check something out.
Yeah, my social media is Ayasha Works, which is, that's my Instagram. It's really the only social media I'm using. So if this resonates and you want to connect, feel free to reach out there. Don't mind that I have a private account. I just do that because I have a lot of students. If you're an artist who wants to connect, I'd love to connect with you too.
I also know you have a website.
Yes, I have a website as well. I think it is also ayashagerinworks.com.
That sounds right, yeah.
All right, so you can find my work there. It's going to be updated soon with, new career news, and I have a little section there where I post announcements and different programs and all sorts of events that I get myself entangled with.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Sorry I had to cut it a little short, but
sorry we didn't get to your game.
Yeah. Oh well, happens every once in a while. All right, thank everyone for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next episode of Mouse House Podcast. And
Thank
we'll see you
you
guys later.
Thanks, Hunter.
No problem.